I was my life changed forever when in 2010 I had memories resurface, recall of experiences with an extraordinary being endowed with unconditional love for all and an impressively, infinitely compassionate heart that knew no bounds and could not speak a negative word against anyone or anything. And I had interacted with her. She was a female, as I remembered, in November of 1992. In fact, it was November 22nd of 1992. And in brief summary, I was in my front yard. Well, first I'd received a phone call from her, and she had told me that she was making this call, and they didn't know she was making the call, and that she was in the custody of U.S. military authorities, and that we would be meeting. And in the few hours we spoke, we shared a great deal. And well, she shared to me herself. I was the student. I listened. And then a few days later we met in person in front of my house one late night, or one evening. Everybody in my neighborhood, in my courtyard, was subdued somehow, so that we would have this encounter, this meeting. And so it ended up me and a few police officers of my hometown who happened to respond to my courtyard because of other people further down the road who were not subdued had told the police there's about a dozen ROVs, black ROVs, down this courtyard. There's about 50 military people running around this man's property. Can you go have a look? And so the police I've spoke to even after the incident, long after, and even recently, the officers from that time were witnesses to this event, where for whatever reason you want to put on this, you want to call it, this girl was brought to me. And who was she? Who steps out? And who steps out of one of the vehicles and met me? It was none other than what many have described as hybrids, gray alien human hybrids. It wasn't any kind of a being made of light, an ascended master. It wasn't any kind of an angel, or it wasn't any kind of a Pleiadian. You've heard of Pleiadians. It wasn't any kind of a it wasn't one of the apostles or anything like this. It was a female, small, diminutive female that stepped out of the vehicle and met me. She was frail. I've described her many times. There was nothing really that striking about her appearance, except that she had larger than normal eyes, human-looking except for 4 fingers, thin, and she was short. There's not much else to say about that. And striking or impressive. Again, there was nothing about her, aside from the fact that she was part human, part Zeta Gray, aside from the fact that she was this, and she wore a very plain black uniform. There was nothing really all that incredible or impressive about her appearance. You could say, skeptically, she wasn't any kind of an alien or extraterrestrial or anything like that. You could say she was you could say that she was nothing more than some young girl who suffered from birth defects. But that's about it. If you wanted to be skeptical, you could say that there are birth defects that look like that. There was nothing ego-driven about her. There wasn't any kind of anything that gave you the impression of any kind of a malevolence or anger or evil or anything. The only anger that was witnessed that night were the military that I then witnessed harm her, as if to watch my reaction to this. I don't know. And she was telling me to forgive them. And there wasn't any elevation. She wasn't as if she was trying to present herself as being better than the human race or anything like that. She was very humble, very loving and very humble. There was no ego. There wasn't any. It was all humility. There wasn't a sense of divinity. She wasn't some kind of divinity. There wasn't any kind of a Christ-like conscience. It wasn't like that. It was just someone that had a very balanced, equal love for all, without ego, unconditional love, and compassion. Total compassion. I could feel her thoughts and feelings, which were projected to me from her mind, and I could understand her in levels that transcend verbal contact. I've never been able to do that with anybody since. There's been nobody. And I don't expect that to be like that with anybody. I don't, because the human race are not telepaths. She was telepathic. But her ability to transmit thoughts and feelings was not a control of any kind. It was a sharing. It was a equal sharing. As soon as I began to communicate with her that way, because she could open up and talk to me that way, and I could pick up what she was saying. She could hear what I was thinking. I'm not a telepath. It was immediately a partnership was developed, a loving partnership, a contact, which was very equal. It only continued as so long as I was allowing her. If I said, I don't want to talk anymore, well then she wouldn't. And that would be it. And the experience was not a dream. It wasn't any kind of an illusion or fantasy or a metaphor for something. That everybody on that road was there. They were very real. The military was very real. Those vehicles were very real. She was very real. And she was there. And we held each other, we hugged each other. And she did feel different. to the touch. But she was very smooth skin, a larger cranium. But these issues are simply unimportant about exactly how she looked, because it detracts from, again, it's like this becomes too much of the focus in ufology, UFO research. It's too much of a weighted, pointless information. Unless you're an exobiologist and you just want to study biology of other life and other worlds. That's a science, but science is a very cold, unfeeling thing. And I find it interesting that many people, I mean, I have a background in science, but I don't front that. There seems to be an attraction to, there are many people that just chase after the logical, cold, unfeeling, brutally objective scientist person in this field. And these people, to me, are absolutely out of touch with something very important that they can't seem to connect to. They can't seem to bridge that connection. They seem completely out of touch. They can't seem to connect to something that is very, very special, very important, and very simple. I think that with a 6-year degree in science, or a 6-year degree, a doctor of medicine, or an 8-year, 4-year degree in psychology, all that education elevates the human psyche. The ego goes up and up and up, and further away they go away from the very simple, humble, loving aspect of life, which is shared between people and other different kinds of people. I don't like to say beings or anything like that. And that's something that I think that many miss out on. And I think that's what she brought to me, was to understand very simply love and the source of love, which there was a connection between the two of us, and that love that we shared brought me into a deeper connection and understanding of a creative Father energy source of love that made the universe. While we didn't discuss religions on earth as such, there was this loving connection. A fountain between us was created, and we together, I was experiencing the source of love, which emanated through us both in our connection and came from a source that made the universe. I felt personally that God was there in our connection and was speaking through me and telling me, Jason, look at her, regard her. She's my child too. Even if she didn't have a mother or father to raise her, she might have had an embryonic egg, an egg from a human woman that had been altered by these extraterrestrial beings, and she was raised in some kind of a nursery, a surrogate containers. masses and masses of these embryo containers containing amniotic fluid that she grew in. There was, while that's flooding through my mind, her life, her history. She still didn't really consider herself as having mothers and fathers. That she had a human mother, but she felt that the human mother, though loved her, had issues about how she came to be. It's kind of like saying, Jason, I was born of rape. How do you think my mother's going to feel about me, knowing that I was created this way? So she didn't want to force herself on her mother, nor to do any of them. And they don't apologize for how they come to be. They don't apologize. But people put down these beings, these hybrids. They put them down. And yet, humanity goes out of its way to kill millions in abortions. They have abortions on this planet for all kinds of reasons. They find reasons to kill. Well, that's not putting anybody down. It's a bit of a double standard. Now, for many who don't know this is real, that these beings are real, that they don't know that, will argue that, well, that's just a figment of your imagination and they're not real and there's no alien abductions. None of that's been going on. To that I say, my experience is always going to be private. And even if I had the evidence of my experience and I backed it up with lots of people, it's still, that becomes a very empty and meaningless endeavor. Even with all the evidence to back it up, it's like saying that it's important to know exactly how she looked. Again, that goes back to biology. It's like science. That's a very cold thing. Science is very cold and empty and void of any feeling. And although these beings have science, it's not principally their the center of them. They don't reach out to be perfectly logical. They don't reach out to be, in your definition of what is rational, they have no such comparison. Rationalization is a very human thing. You can rationalize why you go to war. You can rationalize why you kill. You can rationalize why the CIA would take Annette, my mother, and do what they did to her, and hurt her the way they did, and rape her, and harm her for finding a lost kid. You can say, well, she worked for them. You know, this whole abduction from the family, and this was even talked about in 1992 with my mother Annette. Going back to that for a minute, that she briefly hinted that there might have been, she didn't want to come out and say, but that there was an affair that she had with actor Roy Scheider. And that she felt that it was possible that my abduction from the family might have been as a way of preventing any legal adoption paperwork running back to California. And then she went back and said that Roy's not my dad, but Jack is, her first husband. But she had nothing to do with my abduction or anything to do with that. It wouldn't make any sense to say that she did. She risked all and came to me. She was told the mafia was behind this. So she, like many, she joined the CIA looking for me, then discovered it was in fact the CIA that instigated the mafia to take me away from her. Then when they found what she had done, they hurt her. They hurt her really badly. And this is not getting off point. The human race invented this thing called rationalization. Rational. The word rational. You can rationally say that about anything. You can rationally make the argument that it's okay to drop nuclear bombs. You can rationally make argument about anything. That's what's wrong with rationalization. And for her and her race, they don't have such concepts. They don't rationalize. They don't have to. They don't have to rationalize something because of their they don't have the ego. They feel very humble and share love very deeply, telepathically, equally with each other. There's nothing to rationalize about their actions or what they do. They don't have to rationalize to each other anything. Their actions are purely open and without any lying of any kind. Because if you have to rationalize anything, you're lying. Lawyers do it every day in court. They rationalize why their client did this or did that, and often it's a lie. You can rationalize some evidence, circumstantial evidence, and put an innocent man in jail. And science on Earth is based a lot on rationalization, less than logic, and more on this point. So we have a telepathic being, a girl, that is connecting to me in late 1992. And she's a part of me. She's inside me. She's in that time. And then she goes on to tell me about things in quantum physics that we're only now beginning to understand about quantum connections. And quantum connection is where the quantum simultaneous connection, where two photons, one photon can be connected to another photon across a city or across the earth or from one to the moon, and they can both behave and act the same way, and they are in fact the same particle. They're exactly the same when studied. They're the same particle, but in two separate places, in the third dimension. But they're connected somewhere. And she was telling me this in 1992 about such things, but in not a cold scientific explanation. She's telling me that because she has embedded her energy into me and mine into her, and I've done this willingly. We did this willingly. That wherever she's at or wherever I'm at, we're always the same being. We're the same. It's the most beautiful expression of love. There is no guarded anything. There's this ego, this image, this identity. It's all wiped away. It's perfect clarity between us, and a perfect expression of love. We are one. We are one. What you would have a hard time accepting is who she is, what I just told you of her origins. You'd like me to get on this video and maybe say she was a girl from India that said this, that they had in custody, or she was a woman from the tribe of the Navajo, or she was a girl from California, or someone from... You wouldn't... You don't find... You find it hard to accept this. And again, it goes back to, this is my experience, and all I can say is the best evidence of her existence at all is to tell you in the end of this video that simply that every time you've ever been dealing with me or looking at my videos, you're looking at her. That she's here in front of you too. Now, let's get away from the word divinity and look at humility, love without ego, love without condition, love perfectly and connected in quantum, at a quantum level, where we're the same energy, the same soul. And look at that from that way, in that unity of perfect love. But also know that because the human definition of divinity would be perfect beings that haven't any mistakes and never get angry. They have all the feelings that we have. Everything you can feel, she can feel, and experiences a wide range of feelings, as much as you do, as much as I do. And that wide range of feelings is something that we both experience together. I have good days. I have bad days. And though her depth of understanding goes deeper than mine, with her consciousness much deeper than mine, so she balances me, she gets me back on the path of love, and on that track I then can bring that to you and become a better commentator and blogger on the subject of love and spirituality, and the Father, Creator, Source, and the energy of love comes from that Creator that made the universe, and that fountain of love, of that source of all love, is coming up in all life, and an intelligent life, no matter the origins. If you say, well, how can she have that spark of love and Creator Source love in her? She's a hybrid, created by human Zeta hybrid. She's created by an egg taken from a mother. Well, I say to you, there are many on this planet who are a product of rape, savage rape, but were born and raised with love and grew up to become senators and congressmen and pastors of churches. and great people. So that spark of love is in each of us, that compassion, ever surrendering, sweet compassion within us, within her, within all of her kind. And it doesn't have any prejudice of to whom it goes and rises up into. It rises up in all of us. Those who lose sight of that compassion and that spark of that love, of that source of love, become disconnected people. They hurt others. They are cold, rational. By exterior, they're going to project coldness, rational. They don't, or they hurt others, or they wear uniforms that preach this. There's a lot of hate preaching. I have to admit, I've had times when I've lost sight with my brain. I get the emotions and the memories and the pain of my life and what my real mother went through. And it's through here in the heart, it's through here the source awake. It just keeps flowing, and there it is again. And she is a part of me. And that awakens. It's what makes me a little bit different from other people, is that she's always a part of me. And she continuously awakens up in me. This source is always, it's like I'm always being guided back to that source, Or it's like she lets me kind of wander off for a little while, weeks, months, or even a year. And I'm angry about something, and I'm upset, or I'm ranting about, and then the CIA, and the troubles and corruption in America, and yada yada. A problem that will never be resolved. I don't think I'm ever going to be taken into Annette's family as a brother for whatever reasons that they have to do that, or whatever reason. I'm never going to be acknowledged. It's just my story. And the CIA are covering that up, and there's my issues with that, and I get angry, and I'm like, oh my God. And then comes, it's like she sits quietly. And then, very subtly, without manipulation on me in any way at all, or any coercion, in her own gentle, surrendering, compassionate, loving way, moves in me, awakens that source of creator love, that father love, that God love, that in me, that we share together. That fountain that we have is, we're now one fountain of that life force. And it becomes, there it is again. There it is, and I'm back on track. I've reawakened, and then I'm thinking, I know what I've got to do. I feel drawn to it. Come to you. And share that love, project that love to you, share that love with you, because then you're becoming a part of that circle of love too. You, watching me, are becoming a part of our love too. You're not on the outside. You right there watching me. You are taken into this, and then you come to understand. You have an understanding that I have. It doesn't matter what her origins were. It doesn't matter what my origins were. Taken from California or raised wherever. It doesn't matter her origins. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is that source of love that Father Creator Source, that Father Creator that made the universe many billion, 17 billion years ago. It doesn't matter. The number of digits on my hand are 5, and maybe she has 4 digits. Perhaps her eyes are larger than mine. None of that matters. It doesn't matter what you look like, male or female. It doesn't matter your origins, because right now, this minute, very subtly, you're feeling it within you. What I'm talking about is, it's just very subtly, without manipulation, just ignited within your heart and expanding like this. And you're feeling it as you watch this video. And the interesting thing is, every time you watch this, you're going to be feeling it again, as if you felt it for the first time. It's not about control. It's not about, people will say, well, I talk to that being all the time, Jason, and she said these things to me, and I'm like, well, she wouldn't be. And, making a distinction with you in that way. She's not going to be needing to communicate a message to you when I'm already an aspect incarnate of her, bringing you her anyways. To begin with, I am her, and she is me. So there wouldn't be any need for her to be sending you messages to give back to me, because that would be like looking in a mirror at this point. I already am her, and she's me. So there isn't any need to get a message from her, or reach out, have her say something to you to bring back to me. Because then that would be her speaking to herself, talking to herself. So she knows that already, and realizes that there wouldn't be any pressing need to do that to begin with, since I'm already here doing it in the first place. I came to you 5 years ago, 2010, in YouTube. Began talking about this on starseeds.net and on the Facebook in 2010 about this being, and I brought her to you and said these things to you 5 years ago, well, 6 years ago. And so you know that there isn't, that she's already here. You're already getting her from me. So she wouldn't be sending anybody any messages or reaching out to them, because she's already in me, communicating with you. And then it doesn't matter then at this point that, who she is or who I am. What matters then is that we together are helping everybody collectively into that circle of love we share. We're bringing you into that circle of love. So now you don't have to focus on me or have to make this division between me and her or anything like that. It doesn't matter. All that matters is at this point you and I and all of us are sharing equally inside that circle of love.